coach is in the back, sweetie. Keep walking by now. The group boarding is usually row 20 and back.
Ma'am, I need you to return to your seat.
She thought she could steal a 12-year-old black billionaire's first-class seat and humiliate him into silence, never imagining the boy she mocked would be the one whose code kept the entire plane in the sky. Welcome back to Black Lives Story, where real power, justice, and truth hit harder than fiction. Before we dive into this explosive story, make sure you like, share, and subscribe because you do not want to miss what happens next.
The carpet at Terminal 4 of JFK Airport smelled of industrial vacuum cleaner dust and old coffee. To most travelers, it was a surface to walk on. To 12-year-old Malik Johnson, it was a desk. He sat cross-legged near gate B24, his back pressed against a concrete pillar, oblivious to the rush of hundreds of passengers flowing around him like a river around a stone. His knees were pulled up to his chest, creating a bunker for his laptop. A machine that looked like it had survived a war zone, covered in peeling stickers of Naruto and SpaceX logos. Click-clack, click-clack. His fingers moved across the keyboard at a speed that blurred. On the screen, lines of neon green Python code cascaded like a digital waterfall. Syntax error on line 402, Malik whispered to himself, his voice cracking slightly. He was 12. And his voice was still deciding whether it wanted to be a tenor or a baritone. He frowned, tapping the delete key with a rhythmic aggression. He pushed his glasses up his nose. They were thick, black-framed, and slightly too big for his face. He tugged the hood of his charcoal gray sweatshirt lower over his eyes. It was a habit, a shield. If they couldn't see his eyes, they couldn't ask him why a black kid in a hoodie was typing military-grade encryption code in a public terminal. Malik. The voice was deep, rolling like thunder in a canyon. Malik didn't look up. Almost got it, Jerome. Just a second. The avionics patch is buggy. Jerome stood 5 feet away, a mountain of a man in a discreet black suit. He wasn't just a bodyguard. He was the only family Malik had on the East Coast. Jerome folded his massive arms, scanning the crowd with eyes that missed nothing. Boarding starts in 20, little man, Jerome rumbled. And your dad said no working on the tarmac. You're supposed to be resting. San Francisco is going to be a zoo. Malik stopped typing. He hit enter. The screen flashed, compile successful. He exhaled, a long sigh that deflated his small frame. He closed the laptop. I'm not tired, Malik lied. He rubbed his eyes, which were burning from 12 hours of screen time. I hate flying alone, Jerome. Why can't you sit with me? Jerome's expression softened. You know why? First class was sold out except for that one seat. I'm back in row 30. But I'll be watching. Anybody messes with you, they deal with me. Malik looked at his boarding pass. Seat 2A. First class. It felt heavy in his hand. He didn't feel like a first-class passenger. He felt like an imposter. He was the CEO of MJ Systems, a company valued at $2 billion, but he still felt like the kid who got followed around the convenience store to make sure he wasn't stealing candy. They're gonna stare, Malik whispered. Let 'em stare, Jerome said, offering a hand to pull Malik up. You earned that seat. You bought the whole row if you wanted to. Remember what your dad said. Malik dusted off his jeans, designer denim that he had managed to get grass stains on. Make sure my papers are perfect. Exactly, Jerome nodded. Now put the computer away. Be a kid for 10 minutes. 200 yards away, behind the frosted glass doors of the Diamond Medallion Lounge, the air was different. It didn't smell of dust. It smelled of lilies and desperation. Patricia Vanderhoven sat in a high-backed leather wing chair, gripping a glass of sparkling water, so tightly her manicured nails were turning white. She was 55, though her plastic surgeon swore she passed for 40. She wore a vintage Chanel tweed suit, cream with black piping, that she had bought 10 years ago when Vanderhoven Technologies was still on the Fortune 500 list. Now the suit was a costume. Excuse me, Patricia snapped, waving a hand at a passing waiter. Her voice was sharp, brittle like dry leaves. The waiter stopped. Yes, ma'am. This water, she gestured to the glass. It's tepid. I asked for ice. Crushed ice, specifically. Not cubes. And certainly not this lukewarm bathwater. I apologize, ma'am. The crushed ice machine is currently down for maintenance. Patricia let out a short, incredulous laugh. She looked around the lounge as if inviting the other passengers to witness the tragedy. Down for maintenance, she repeated. I pay $6,000 a year for this membership, and I cannot get frozen water? Is this a lounge or a refugee camp? I can bring you cubes, ma'am. Forget it, Patricia hissed, turning away. Just go away. The waiter retreated. Patricia picked up her phone. Her hand was trembling. She took a sip of the water to hide the shake. She dialed her husband, Richard. It went to voicemail. Again. Richard, she left a message, her voice dropping to a frantic whisper. Pick up. I'm boarding in 20 minutes. I need the pitch deck for the San Francisco meeting. If we don't secure the contract with MJ Systems, the bank is going to foreclose on the Hamptons house by Friday. Do you hear me? I cannot go to the gala on Saturday if we are bankrupt. Call me back. She hung up, her chest heaving. She looked at her reflection in the darkened screen of her phone. She looked tired. The makeup was settling into the fine lines around her mouth. She hated this. She hated the begging. She hated the feeling of sliding down the mountain she had spent her life climbing. She needed a win. She needed to feel powerful again. She needed to remind the world, and herself, that she was Patricia van der Hoeven, and she mattered. Flight 294 to San Francisco, first class and diamond medallion members, please proceed to gate B24, the intercom announced. Patricia stood up. She smoothed her skirt. She put on her oversized sunglasses, hiding the fear in her eyes. She grabbed her Louis Vuitton carry-on, the one with the broken zipper she had carefully pinned shut so no one would notice. Time to go, she whispered to herself. Chin up, Patty. You own the room. The gate area was a crush of bodies. Malik stood near the boarding lane, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He looked small, drowning in the sea of suits and briefcases. He pulled his hood up again, trying to disappear. Jerome gave him a subtle nod from the economy line. You got this. Malik took a deep breath. He stepped into the priority lane. Behind him, he heard the click-clack of high heels. Fast. Aggressive. Excuse me. A sharp voice cut through the noise. Malik felt a hand on his shoulder, pushing him aside. Not hard, but dismissive. Like moving a curtain. He stumbled slightly, looking up. A woman in a cream suit swept past him, her perfume cloud hitting him in the face. She didn't look down. She didn't apologize. She marched straight to the ticket counter, slapping her boarding pass down. Patricia van der Hoeven, she announced to the gate agent, loud enough for everyone to hear. Priority 1. Malik adjusted his glasses. He looked at the back of her head. He didn't say anything. He just stepped back in line, clutching his boarding pass, seat 2A like a shield. He watched her disappear down the jet bridge, walking with the confidence of someone who believed the world had been paved specifically for her heels. Malik looked at his own sneakers. Just get to the seat, he mumbled to himself. Just get to the seat and put the headphones on. He handed his pass to the agent. Have a nice flight, Mr. Johnson, the agent said, smiling. Malik forced a smile back. Thank you. He walked down the jet bridge, the tunnel narrowing. He didn't know yet that the woman in the cream suit wasn't just another passenger. She was a test, and he was about to find out that his father was right. The papers wouldn't be enough. He would need more than perfect code to survive what was waiting for him in row 2. Have you ever been judged by your appearance in a public place? Or have you judged someone else and been wrong? Let us know in the comments below. I read every single one. Stepping onto the plane was like crossing a border between two countries. The humidity of the jet bridge vanished, replaced by the crisp, recycled chill of the cabin air. It smelled different here, leather conditioner, fresh citrus, and the expensive perfume of silence. Malik clutched his boarding pass in his right hand, his knuckles ashen. His left hand gripped the strap of his laptop bag, so tight his fingers hurt. Seat 2A. Window. Left side. He moved down the aisle. Row 1 was empty. Row 2. Malik stopped. His sneakers squeaked faintly on the carpet, a sound that seemed deafening in the quiet cabin. Seat 2A was not empty. It was occupied by a mountain of cream tweed. Patricia van der Hoeven was settled in deep. She had already kicked off her heels. Her legs were crossed, a flute of pre-flight champagne balanced precariously on the armrest. A thick Vogue magazine was spread open on her lap. She was staring out the window at the tarmac, looking bored, looking immovable. Malik blinked. He looked at his ticket. 2A. He looked at the seat number painted on the overhead bin. 2A. He felt a flush of heat crawl up his neck. Maybe I'm wrong, his brain whispered, the default setting of a boy used to being questioned. Maybe I messed up the date. Maybe I'm in the wrong plane. He checked the flight number on the pass. Flight 294. No, he wasn't wrong. His heart began a slow, heavy thud against his ribs. Thump, thump, thump. This was the nightmare scenario. The one Jerome had warned him about. You take up space, Malik. You don't ask for it. You take it. But Jerome was back in row 30. Malik was alone. He took a small step forward. The air conditioning vent above him hissed, blowing cold air onto his face. Excuse me, Malik said. His voice was small. It caught in his throat like a piece of dry bread. He cleared his throat and tried again, forcing the baritone down. Excuse me, ma'am? Patricia didn't flinch. She turned a page of her magazine with a sharp snap. Coach is in the back, sweetie, she said. She didn't look up. She spoke to the page, as if the air itself was annoying her. Keep walking. The group boarding is usually row 20 and back. The group. The words hung in the air, heavy and ugly. Malik knew what that meant. He looked down at his hoodie. He looked at his sneakers. In her mind, he wasn't a passenger. He was part of a herd. A school trip. A sports team. Something loud and temporary that needed to be herded to the rear. I'm not with a group, Malik stammered. He stepped closer, entering her peripheral vision. I have a ticket. For this seat. 2A. Patricia finally moved. She lowered the magazine slowly, annoyed, like a teacher interrupted during a break. She turned her head. Her sunglasses were perched on top of her head now, revealing eyes that were cold, blue, and utterly unimpressed. She scanned him, top to bottom. She saw the messy hair, the hoodie, the beat-up laptop bag. She didn't see the brain that could code circles around her husband's entire engineering team. She saw a nuisance. You must be lost, Patricia said, a tight, pitying smile stretching her lips. This is first class. Look at your ticket again. It probably says 22A. Or 32A. It happens all the time. She turned back to the window, dismissing him entirely. Conversation over. Malik felt a sting in his eyes. It was humiliation, hot and sharp. He wanted to run. He wanted to go find Jerome and hide. No, a voice inside him said. My papers are perfect. He thrust the boarding pass forward, holding it right over her magazine, invading her space just enough to force her to see it. It says 2A, Malik said, his voice trembling but louder. C. Malik Johnson. Seat 2A. Priority 1. Patricia stared at the piece of paper hovering over an article about Tuscan villas. She read the bold letters. 2A. For a second, Malik thought she would apologize. He thought she would gasp, grab her bag, and move to her actual seat. Instead, Patricia let out a loud, incredulous laugh. Oh, for heaven's sake, she scoffed. She swatted his hand away gently, as if shooing a fly. They've obviously overbooked. The system is always glitching. She picked up her champagne glass and took a sip, looking at him over the rim. Just go find an empty one in the back, honey. Or tell the stewardess to find you a spot near the bathroom. I'm settled. I've got my champagne. And I am certainly not unpacking my bags just because the computer made a mistake. She set the glass down and went back to her reading. I'm not moving for a child, she muttered, the final punctuation on the sentence. Malik stood frozen in the aisle. It wasn't just about the seat anymore. If she had been polite, if she had said, oh no, let's check with the attendant, he might have been okay. But she hadn't just stolen his seat. She had looked right at him, seen his name, seen his proof, and decided that her comfort was more important than his reality. She had erased him. He looked at the empty seat next to her, 2B. He could just sit there. It would be easier. It would end the conflict. But then he looked at his reflection in the darkened window next to her. He saw a scared kid in a hoodie. And he knew, with a terrifying clarity, that if he sat in 2B, he would be agreeing with her. He would be admitting that he didn't belong in 2A. He tightened his grip on the laptop bag. The plastic handle dug into his palm, a grounding pain. He wasn't moving. Malik stared at seat 2B. It was right there. Empty. Wide leather armrests, a fluffy pillow, a bottle of water waiting in the console. It was only inches away from seat 2A. If he sat there, the tension would evaporate. Patricia would go back to her magazine. The plane would take off, and he could put on his noise-canceling headphones and pretend this never happened. His body wanted to move. Every instinct he had developed as a shy, introverted coder screamed at him to take the path of least resistance. Just sit down, Malik. Don't make a scene. Don't be that kid. He shifted his weight, his sneakers squeaking on the cabin floor. From the corner of his eye, he saw movement in the aisle behind him. Jerome was standing up in row 30. Even from this distance, the man looked like a thunderhead gathering on the horizon. He adjusted his suit jacket, stepping into the aisle, his eyes locked on the back of Patricia's head. He was ready to clear the obstruction the only way a bodyguard knew how. Malik felt a surge of panic. If Jerome came up here, it would be over. But it wouldn't be Malik's victory. It would be a rescue. And worse, a large black man confronting a wealthy white woman on a plane? Malik knew how that headline ended. Malik raised his left hand, palm open, keeping it low by his hip. Stop. Jerome paused. He frowned, tilting his head. Malik gave a microscopic shake of his head. I got this. Jerome hesitated, then slowly sank back into his seat, though he remained perched on the edge, a coiled spring. Malik turned back to Patricia. He wasn't going to sit in 2B. Ma'am, Malik said, his voice steadier now. I paid for the window. I specifically chose 2A because I need to work, and the glare on the aisle seat makes it hard to see my screen. It was a lie. The screens were anti-glare, but it was a logical argument. He was trying to speak her language. Patricia didn't appreciate the logic. She appreciated the audacity. She reached up and stabbed the flight attendant call button. Ding. She didn't look at Malik. She drummed her fingers on the armrest, staring straight ahead, waiting for the staff to come and remove the debris from her path. A flight attendant hurried over from the galley. Her name tag read Jennifer. She looked stressed, a sheen of sweat on her forehead. The plane was fully boarded, and they were already 3 minutes behind schedule. Is there a problem, Ms. van der Hoven? Jennifer asked. She knew the name. The manifest had flagged her. Diamond medallion. Frequent flyer. High value. Yes, Jennifer, there is, Patricia said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness that barely covered the venom underneath. We have a situation with an unaccompanied minor. He seems to be confused about where his group is sitting. He's blocking the aisle and disturbing the cabin. She gestured vaguely at Malik as if he were a stray dog that had wandered onto the jet. Jennifer turned to Malik. She saw the hoodie. She saw the messy hair. She saw the sticker-covered laptop bag. Then she looked at the ticket in Malik's hand. 2A. Jennifer blinked. She looked at Patricia, comfortably settled in 2A with her champagne and her Vogue and her diamond tennis bracelet. Then she looked at the digital seating chart on her handheld device. Seat 2A, Johnson Malik. Seat 2B open. It was clear as day. The woman was poaching the seat. But Jennifer was tired. She had worked a double shift yesterday. She knew the type of passenger Patricia was, the type who wrote letters to corporate, the type who got flight attendants fired for attitude. Jennifer made a calculation. It was a cowardly calculation, but a human one. She smiled at Malik. It was a tight, apologetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. Hey there, sweetie, Jennifer said, her voice pitching up an octave, the voice one uses for toddlers. I see you have 2A. That's great. She glanced at Patricia, who was now pointedly ignoring them both. But, look, Jennifer lowered her voice, leaning in. We're running a little late, and this lady is already all settled in with her things. It would take a long time to move her bags and get everything sorted. She gestured to the empty aisle seat. Seat 2B is right there. It's the exact same seat, big and comfy. Would you mind just hopping in there for us? Just to be a team player? I can bring you some extra snacks. The injustice of it hit Malik like a physical blow to the chest. A team player. He was being asked to fix a problem he didn't create. He was being asked to surrender his property because the adult in the room was a bully and the authority figure was a coward. The pressure in the cabin began to rise. Passengers in rows 3 and 4 were watching. They weren't saying anything, but the silence felt heavy. They were waiting to see if the kid would fold. "I don't want snacks," Malik whispered. "I'm sorry," Jennifer asked, leaning closer. "I said I don't want snacks," Malik said, gripping his boarding pass until the edges crinkled. "And I don't want to be. This is my seat. Why does she get to keep it just because she sat down first?" Jennifer sighed, her patience fraying. She looked at Patricia, pleading with her eyes for cooperation. Patricia didn't budge. "Look, Han," Jennifer said, her tone hardening slightly. "We need to close the cabin doors. If you keep blocking the aisle, we can't leave. You're holding up the whole plane. Please, just sit in 2B. She framed it perfectly. Now Malik wasn't the victim. He was the obstruction. He was the reason everyone was going to be late. Malik looked around. A man in 3C checked his watch aggressively. A woman in 4D sighed loudly. They blamed him. He felt the walls of the cabin closing in. The air felt thin. It would be so easy to just sit down. To let the woman win. To survive. But he looked at Patricia's face. She was smirking at her reflection in the window. She knew she had won. She knew the system was built to protect her comfort over his rights. Malik planted his feet. "No," he said. Thump hiss. The heavy forward cabin door swung shut and locked into place. The sound reverberated through the frame of the aircraft, sealing the passengers inside a pressurized tube. Cabin crew, arm doors and cross-check. The pilot's voice crackled over the PA system. Malik didn't move. He stood in the aisle, a statue in a gray hoodie. Jennifer, the flight attendant, looked panicked. The plane was technically ready to push back, but she had a standing passenger in the first-class cabin. This was a massive FAA violation. She backed away toward the galley, grabbing the interphone to call the cockpit, effectively leaving Malik alone on the front line. He was trapped. To his right was the bulkhead wall. Behind him were rows of impatient passengers. And directly to his left, inches from his hip, was Patricia van der Hoven. The proximity was suffocating. He could smell the alcohol on her breath now, mixing with her floral perfume. He could see the foundations settling into the creases of her neck. He was in her personal space, and she hated it. Patricia shifted in her seat, angling her body away from him as if he were contagious. She looked across the aisle to the man in seat 2D, an older businessman with silver hair who was watching the scene over the rim of his reading glasses. "Can you believe this?" Patricia whispered loudly. It was a stage whisper, meant to be heard in the last row. The man in 2D hesitated, then gave a non-committal shrug. Patricia took that as encouragement. "It's these new policies," she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hiss. "The airline is so desperate to meet their quotas that they just let anyone up front. No background checks. No standards." She shot a glance at Malik's hoodie. "I mean, look at him," she scoffed. "It's a safety risk. You let urban youth wander around first class with backpacks, and who knows what happens. I feel unsafe. Do you feel unsafe?" The words hit Malik like darts. Urban youth. Quotas. Safety risk. He wasn't a risk. He was a 12-year-old boy who liked anime and calculus. He wanted to scream. He wanted to tell her that he had skipped 2 grades. He wanted to tell her that his quota was a SAT score of 1580. But his father's voice echoed in his head. "Don't get angry, Malik. Get proof. Anger makes you look guilty. Proof makes you undeniable. Proof." He needed to show her. He needed to prove he wasn't a thug or a charity case. If she saw the email, the official confirmation from the airline with his name and status, she would have to stop talking. Malik's hands were shaking violently. He fumbled with the zipper of his bag. Zip. The sound was loud in the quiet cabin. Patricia flinched, pulling her legs up. What is he doing? Why is he reaching into his bag? Malik ignored her. He pulled out his laptop. It was a beast of a machine, a custom-built razor with extra cooling vents covered in stickers, a NASA logo, a Bitcoin symbol, and a cartoon character with spiky yellow hair. He flipped the lid open. The screen woke up instantly. He hadn't closed his work from earlier. The itinerary was there, yes, but it was buried under 3 open terminal windows, running a system diagnostic on the avionics patch he had just finished. Columns of neon green text scrolled rapidly down a black background. Complex algorithms. Data packets. Hexadecimal code. To a programmer, it looked like poetry. To Patricia van der Hoven, it looked like a bomb threat. Malik turned the screen toward her, his fingers shaking as he tried to point to the flight confirmation tab in the corner. "Look," Malik said, his voice pleading. "Right here. It says Malik Johnson. Paid in full. See?" Patricia didn't look at the name. She looked at the scrolling green code. Her eyes went wide. She saw something she didn't understand, something that looked like the movies she watched about cyber-terrorists. She shrieked. It was a sharp, high-pitched sound that cut through the cabin. "He's hacking," Patricia yelled, scrambling back into her seat, pressing her spine against the window. "Oh my God! Put it away!" "What?" Malik blinked, confused. "No, it's just code. I'm a developer. He's hacking the plane." Patricia shouted to the passengers behind her. Panic, raw and irrational, spiked in her voice. "He's got some kind of device. He's doing something to the signals. Jennifer. Captain. Get him off." She swatted at the air, terrified of the 12-year-old boy and his sticker-covered computer. "You're probably hacking the bank accounts," she accused, her logic fracturing under fear. "Or the navigation. Stop it. Don't you dare touch those keys." Malik froze, holding the laptop like a hot coal. He looked around. The man in 2D looked alarmed now. People in row 3 were standing up to look. "I'm not hacking," Malik whispered, tears pricking his eyes. "I'm showing you my ticket." "I don't care what you're showing me." Patricia sneered, her face twisted into a mask of ugliness. "People like you don't write code. You steal it. Put that away before I scream for the marshal." Malik stood there, the open laptop in his hands, the green text illuminating his terrified face. He had tried to use his brilliance as a shield, but she had turned it into a weapon against him. He was the smartest person on the plane, and she had just reduced him to a criminal. As Patricia's scream, "People like you don't write code," reverberated through the cabin, the world around Malik dissolved. The white plastic walls of the 747 melted away into the chalkboard dust of a classroom 3 years ago. Time shift. Malik was 9. He was standing at the front of Mrs. Gable's 4th-grade math class. On the board behind him was a quadratic equation intended for the 8th-grade advanced placement test. He had solved it in 30 seconds, the chalk dust still coating his fingers. The answer was correct. But Mrs. Gable wasn't smiling. "Malik," she said, her voice tight, "did you look at the answer key on my desk?" The class giggled. Malik shrank into himself. "No, ma'am. I saw the numbers in my head." "Don't lie to me," Mrs. Gable sighed, wiping the board clean. "Someone like you, maybe you have other talents. Sports, perhaps. But let's not pretend you solved this alone. Go back to your seat." That night, Malik had cried in his father's study. His father, Marcus Johnson, a man who had built an empire from a garage in Oakland, hadn't hugged him. He had turned his chair around and looked Malik in the eye. "Stop crying," Marcus said gently. "Mrs. Gable is teaching you the most important lesson you will ever learn. Not about math. About the world." Marcus tapped a stack of legal documents on his desk. "They will always assume you stole it, son. They will assume you cheated. They will assume you are lost. So you can never just be good. You have to be undeniable. They will always ask for your papers. So make sure your papers are perfect." Flash forward. Malik stood in the airplane aisle. He had the papers. He had the ticket. He had the code. He was undeniable. And it still wasn't enough. Patricia's heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The panic she felt wasn't just about the boy in the hoodie. It was about the email burning a hole in her phone pocket. Flashback, 2 hours ago. Patricia sat in the back of a town car, reading the message from her husband, Richard. Subject, urgent MJ Systems meeting. Patty, the bank called. They're freezing the line of credit on Monday. We have one shot. You have to convince the CEO of MJ Systems to license our hardware. I know they're a new company, some Silicon Valley disruptors, but they have the contract with the airlines. If we don't get this deal, Van der Hoven Tech is insolvent. The house, the cars, the club memberships. It all goes. Don't mess this up. Look strong. These tech guys smell fear. Patricia had stared at the phone. MJ Systems. She didn't know much about them, only that their software was revolutionizing avionics. She imagined the CEO, some faceless, Ivy League tycoon. Probably arrogant. Probably white. Someone she could charm over a martini. She had wiped a tear from her cheek, checked her makeup in the rearview mirror, and put on her armor. The Chanel suit, the diamonds, the attitude. She had to project power. She had to be the queen, or she would be a pauper. Back to the present. Patricia stared at the boy standing over her. The boy with the messy computer. The boy she had called a thug. She was terrified. If this boy started hacking the plane, the flight would be canceled. She would miss the meeting in San Francisco. She would lose the house. She would be exposed as a failure. She needed him gone. She needed to be the hero who spotted the threat. He's dangerous. Patricia yelled to the flight attendant, doubling down on her delusion because the alternative, that she was wrong, was too painful to bear. Look at that screen. It's gibberish. It's malware. The tragedy of the moment hung in the air, invisible to everyone but the universe. Patricia van der Hoeven was on her way to beg for money from the CEO of MJ Systems. And she was currently trying to get the CEO of MJ Systems arrested. She was screaming at her own salvation, blinded by the very prejudice she used to make herself feel safe. Malik looked down at the woman. He didn't know about her failing company. He didn't know about her fear. He just saw a bully. But he also saw the error in her logic. It's not malware, Malik said quietly, his voice cutting through her shouting. He turned the laptop screen toward the man in 3C, the businessman who had been watching. It's an optimization script for the altimeter feed, Malik explained, pointing to line 402. See, it reduces latency by 0.4 milliseconds. I wrote it. Patricia scoffed. You wrote it? Please. But the man in 3C leaned forward. He squinted at the screen. He adjusted his glasses. And for the first time, someone actually looked at the papers. The man in seat 3C squinted. He was an older gentleman with thick spectacles and a tie that had been loosened hours ago. He looked like a university professor or a tired engineer. He leaned past Patricia, ignoring her outrage, and peered directly at Malik's screen. Is that Python? The man asked. His voice was raspy, curious. Malik blinked, surprised by the question. He looked from the angry woman to the curious man. Yes, sir, Malik said, his voice dropping into the comfortable cadence of a techie. It's Python 3.11. I'm running a custom library for asynchronous data processing. The standard avionics loop has a latency of 1.2 milliseconds, but if I bypass the redundant checks here, he pointed to a block of code, I can get it down to 0.8. The man in 3CS eyebrows shot up. You're rewriting the garbage collection on a live kernel? The man asked, impressed. That's risky, but brilliant. Who are you working for? Boeing. MJ Systems, Malik said, standing a little taller. I built the kernel. Patricia scoffed loudly. Oh, please. He's making it up. It's probably a video game script. It's not a game, ma'am. The man in 3C said sharply, cutting her off. He looked at Malik with a newfound respect. That's elegant code, son. Truly. Thank you, Malik smiled. It was a real smile, shy but proud. The knot in his chest loosened just a fraction. The dynamic in the cabin shifted. It wasn't a landslide yet, but the pebbles were starting to roll. The passengers nearby had heard the exchange. They heard the intelligence in the boy's voice. They heard the lack of fear. Just then, a young woman in seat 4B stood up, struggling with her carry-on. The overhead bin latch was stuck. She was pushing and pulling, her face flushing with embarrassment as the line behind her grew impatient. Stupid thing, she muttered, banging on the plastic. Patricia rolled her eyes. Great. Now the equipment is breaking. This airline is falling apart. Malik didn't hesitate. He handed his laptop to the man in 3C, a gesture of immense trust. Hold this, please. He squeezed past Patricia, careful not to touch her tweed suit. He stepped up to row 4. It's not broken, Malik said gently to the woman. The sensor is misaligned. You just have to lift while you push. He reached up. He wasn't tall enough to get good leverage, so he stood on his tiptoes. He placed one hand on the bottom lip of the bin and one on the latch. Click. The bin popped open smoothly. Oh, the woman gasped, relieved. Thank you so much. I was about to panic. It happens on the 747-800S, Malik shrugged, stepping back. Design flaw in the latch mechanism. He walked back to row 3, retrieved his laptop, and looked at Patricia. The silence in the cabin was different now. It wasn't the heavy, awkward silence of before. It was a judgmental silence, and it was aimed entirely at seat 2A. The passengers were looking at the boy who wrote code and fixed bins. Then they looked at the woman drinking champagne and screaming about hackers. He seems pretty helpful for a safety risk, a man in row 5 muttered, loud enough to be heard. Yeah, the woman in 4B added, stowing her bag. He's cleaner than half the people on this flight. Patricia felt the room turn. The heat rose in her cheeks. She was losing the audience. Her narrative, that she was the victim of a chaotic system, was crumbling. She was being exposed as the villain in a room full of witnesses. She gripped her armrests. She couldn't let this happen. She was Patricia van der Hoven. She didn't lose arguments to children in hoodies. You're all fooled, Patricia hissed, her voice rising in pitch. He's manipulating you. It's a trick. She turned on Malik, her eyes wild. You think you're so smart? She spat. Get away from me. You're looming over me. It's threatening. Malik stood his ground. He wasn't shaking anymore. He felt the invisible support of the rows behind him. I'm just standing in the aisle, ma'am, Malik said calmly. Waiting for my seat. Patricia van der Hoven felt the atmosphere in the cabin tightening around her throat like a noose. She looked left. The man in 3C was glaring at her over his spectacles. She looked right. The woman across the aisle was shaking her head in open disgust. She was losing. Patricia had spent her entire life curating an image of untouchable elegance. She was the woman who sat at the head of the table. She was the woman who decided who got into the club and who stayed outside. But here, at 30,000 feet, or rather 0 feet, her currency was worthless. The boy, this child in a hoodie, had stripped her naked. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't insulted her. He had just existed, brilliantly and calmly, and in doing so, he had made her look small. I am not small, Patricia thought, her heart racing. I am important. I am fighting for my life. Malik stood in the aisle, sensing the shift. He knew he had the crowd, but he also knew the plane wasn't moving. Jennifer, the flight attendant, was still cowering in the galley, pretending to be busy with the beverage cart. We need the captain, Malik realized. This ends now. He took a step closer to row 2. He didn't look at Patricia. He looked up at the service panel above her head. Excuse me, Malik murmured, reaching up. He leaned slightly over the armrest of seat 2C, the aisle seat, his arm extending toward the orange call button. He was careful. He kept his body angled away from her. He made sure not to brush against her tweed suit. But to Patricia, his movement looked like an attack. She saw a dark shape looming over her. She saw the arm coming down. And all the stress of the bankruptcy, the failing marriage, and the public humiliation boiled over into a single kinetic spark. No, Patricia shrieked. She didn't think. She reacted. She swung her arm up in a violent backhanded arc. Her hand, heavy with a platinum wedding ring and the diamond tennis bracelet, connected hard with Malik's forearm. Smack! It was a solid hit. Malik gasped, pain shooting up his wrist. His grip faltered. The heavy, custom-built Razor laptop slipped from his fingers. Time seemed to suspend. Malik watched it fall. He watched the stickers of NASA and SpaceX rotate in the air. He watched his life's work, his source code, his perfect papers, tumbling toward the hard metal track of the seat leg. Crack! The sound was nauseating. It wasn't a dull thud. It was the sharp, jagged sound of tempered glass shattering and internal components snapping. The laptop landed corner first on the metal rail, then flopped face down onto the carpet. Silence. Absolute, vacuum-sealed silence filled the first-class cabin. Malik stood frozen, his hand still raised in the air, throbbing where she had hit him. He looked down at the floor. He didn't move to pick it up. He just stared at the wreckage. Patricia stared at it too. For a split second, her face registered shock. She hadn't meant to hit him. She hadn't meant to break anything. But then the self-preservation instinct kicked in. The same instinct that made her steal the seat made her twist the narrative. She pulled her legs up, pressing herself against the window, her eyes wide and wet with fake tears. "He hit me," Patricia screamed. Her voice cracked, high and hysterical. "Did you see that? He lunged at me. Don't touch me. Get away." She pointed a trembling finger at Malik, who was still staring at his broken computer, his eyes filling with tears. "He's violent," Patricia yelled to the stunned passengers. I told you he was dangerous. He tried to grab me." The accusation hung in the air, ugly and poisonous. Malik looked up slowly. His glasses were crooked. His breathing was shallow. He looked at the passengers. He looked for the man in 3C. He looked for the woman in 4B. Do they believe her? For a heartbeat, the old fear returned. The fear that no matter how good his code was, no matter how polite he was, the word of a screaming white woman would always weigh more than the silence of a black boy. "I didn't," Malik whispered, his voice trembling. "I was just reaching for the button." "Liar," Patricia sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "He attacked me. Get the pilot. Get him off this plane right now." The fragile piece of the cabin was destroyed. The bond was severed. Violence had entered the room, and now there was no going back to polite conversation. From the back of the cabin, heavy footsteps approached. Fast. Jerome was coming. And this time, Malik didn't raise his hand to stop him. The cockpit door flew open. Captain Miller stormed into the cabin. He was a tall man with 4 gold stripes on his shoulder boards and a face that had zero patience for nonsense. He had been holding on the tarmac for 15 minutes, and now his lead flight attendant was screaming about an assault. "Everyone sit down," Miller barked, his voice commanding the space. "Now!" Patricia didn't sit. She scrambled toward him, clutching her wrist as if it were broken. It wasn't. "Captain," she wailed, pointing a trembling finger at Malik. "Thank God. Arrest him. He attacked me. He's violent." She gestured wildly to the aisle. "And now his friend is coming to finish the job." Malik looked back. Jerome had reached row 2. He didn't look like a bodyguard anymore. He looked like a father who had just watched someone hit his son. His fists were clenched so tight the leather of his gloves creaked. He stepped into the first-class cabin, his massive frame blocking the light from the galley. "If you touch him again," Jerome rumbled, his voice low and terrifying, "we are going to have a problem that the police can't fix." The passengers gasped. The tension in the room spiked to a breaking point. It looked bad. To an outsider, it looked like an aggressive man and a violent boy cornering a wealthy woman. Captain Miller's hand drifted toward the radio on his belt. He was seconds away from calling airport SWAT. "Back up," Miller ordered Jerome. "Sir, back up or you will be detained." Malik stood between them. The eye of the hurricane. He looked down at his feet. The Razor laptop lay on the carpet, its screen spiderwebbed with cracks, the neon green code flickering and dying. The optimization script, the work that was supposed to save Patricia's husband's company, was gone. He wanted to cry. He wanted to let Jerome handle it. He wanted to scream that it wasn't fair. But he looked at Patricia. She was breathing hard, her eyes darting around, waiting for the handcuffs to come out. She was banking on the pilot seeing what she saw. A thug in a hoodie. Malik took a deep breath. He adjusted his glasses. He pushed the hair out of his eyes. He stepped in front of Jerome. He held up a hand, stopping his protector. "Jerome, stand down," Malik said. His voice wasn't the voice of a 12-year-old boy. It was cool, flat, and authoritative. It was the voice he used in boardrooms when he had to tell engineers twice his age that their math was wrong. Jerome paused. He looked at Malik, then stepped back, respecting the command. Malik turned to the captain. He didn't look at the floor. He didn't look at his shoes. He looked Captain Miller directly in the eye. "Captain," Malik said clearly. "My name is Malik Johnson." Patricia scoffed, wiping her fake tears. "Who cares what your name is? You're a criminal." Malik ignored her. He reached into his back pocket. He moved slowly, deliberately, so no one would think he was reaching for a weapon. He pulled out a slim, black titanium wallet. He extracted a business card and a global entry ID. He handed them to the captain. "I am the founder and CEO of MJ Systems," Malik stated. "My company wrote the avionics kernel for this Boeing 747-800. Specifically, the autopilot redundancy patch you downloaded 3 weeks ago. Captain Miller froze. He looked at the boy. Then he looked at the card. Malik Johnson, CEO, MJ Systems. The logo on the card matched the logo on the flight manuals in the cockpit. I am not a security threat, Malik continued, his voice steady, though his heart was hammering. I was attempting to press the call button to request assistance because this passenger has been harassing me since I boarded. When I reached up, she struck me. He pointed to the shattered laptop. That computer contains proprietary source code valued at over $2 million. She destroyed it. Malik looked at Patricia, then back to the captain. I would like to press charges for assault and destruction of property. The silence that followed was heavy. The captain looked at the shattered laptop. He looked at the red mark forming on Malik's arm. He looked at Patricia, whose face had gone from red to a sickly shade of pale gray. He's lying. Patricia shrieked, but her voice was thin now. He printed that card at home. It's a fake. Look at him. He's a child. Captain Miller looked at the man in seat 3C. Sir, the captain asked. What did you see? The man in 3C stood up. He adjusted his tie. The boy is telling the truth, Captain, the man said firmly. He was polite. She was abusive. And she struck him. I saw the whole thing. Me too, the woman in 4B called out. We all saw it, a voice from row 5 added. The truth washed over the cabin. The perfect papers Malik had presented weren't just his ID, they were his character. Captain Miller turned to Patricia. His expression hardened. The decision was made. Captain Miller looked at Patricia van der Hoven. He didn't see a Diamond Medallion member. He didn't see a wealthy socialite. He saw a liability. He pressed the radio on his shoulder. Tower, this is Flight 294. We are unable to depart. Requesting Port Authority police to the jetway immediately for passenger removal. Seat 2A. Patricia gasped. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a ghost. Removal, she whispered. You can't. I have a meeting. I have to be in San Francisco. You should have thought of that before you assaulted a passenger, Captain Miller said coldly. He stepped aside as 2 uniformed officers boarded the plane. The cabin went silent. The air was thick with anticipation. The officers walked down the aisle. They passed Jerome, who stood like a statue watching. They passed Malik, who was clutching his bruised arm. They stopped at row 2. Ma'am, the lead officer said, his voice flat. Grab your bags. You're coming with us. Patricia clung to the armrests. Her knuckles were white. No, she screamed, her composure finally fracturing completely. Do you know who I am? My husband is Richard van der Hoven. We are personal friends with the senator. You cannot touch me. Ma'am, stand up or you will be assisted, the officer warned, reaching for his cuffs. Patricia looked around the cabin, searching for an ally. She looked at the man in 3C. He looked away. She looked at Jennifer, the flight attendant. Jennifer was studying the carpet. Patricia realized, with a terrifying finality, that her status had expired. She stood up, shaking. She grabbed her Louis Vuitton bag, the one with the broken zipper. As she yanked it from under the seat, the pin holding it shut popped. The bag burst open. Cheap, travel-sized toiletries and a pair of worn-out slippers spilled onto the aisle floor. It was the final humiliation. The facade of wealth lay scattered on the carpet for everyone to see. Let's go, the officer said, taking her arm. As they escorted her down the aisle, Patricia continued to scream. But it was just noise now. I'll sue you. I'll sue all of you. That boy is a liar. When she crossed the threshold of the cabin door and disappeared into the jet bridge, a sound rose up from the passengers. It started with the man in 3C. A slow, heavy clap. Then the woman in 4B joined in. Then the college kid in row 5. Within seconds, the entire cabin was cheering. It wasn't a polite golf clap. It was a roar of relief and justice. It was the sound of people who were tired of bullies winning. Captain Miller turned to Malik. His expression softened. Mr. Johnson, the captain said, I apologize for the delay. And for the lack of protection from my crew. He glanced sternly at Jennifer. We will be filing a full report against Ms. van der Hoven. You won't have to worry about her again. Thank you, Captain, Malik said quietly. Now, the captain gestured to the empty window seat. I believe seat 2A is yours. Malik looked at the seat. It was just a chair, leather and foam. But it looked like a throne. Jerome stepped forward. He picked up the shattered laptop from the floor. He looked at it with a grimace, then looked at Malik. I can recover the hard drive, little man, Jerome said gently. The data is safe. Just the shell is broken. I know, Malik nodded. He looked at his arm. It would bruise, but he wasn't broken either. Malik stepped past the spilled toiletries. He sat down in seat 2A. It fit perfectly. He buckled the seatbelt. The click was the most satisfying sound he had ever heard. He reached into his backpack. He didn't have his laptop, but he pulled out a slim backup tablet. He wiped the screen with his sleeve. The plane began to push back. The engines whined to life, a deep, powerful thrum that vibrated through the floorboards. Malik leaned his head against the cool plastic of the window. He watched the terminal building slide away. He watched the ground crew waving the wands. He watched the world moving beneath him. He thought about Mrs. Gable telling him he cheated. He thought about the gate agent assuming he was lost. He thought about Patricia telling him to find his group. He unlocked the tablet. He opened a new file. He wasn't part of a group. He was Malik Johnson. As the plane turned onto the runway and the engines roared for takeoff, lifting the nose toward the sky, Malik watched the horizon expand. I earned this view, he whispered. And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel the need to prove it to anyone but himself. Have you ever stood your ground when someone tried to move you? Tell me your story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice served cold.